Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr for our instant reaction from a bizarre 29-23 loss to Clemson in the Fiesta Bowl. Tom,
Yeah, same. That was, first of all, that was one heck of a football game.
It was amazing.
That was a football game that as you were watching it, you know, this is a football game that people in Ohio are going to be talking about one way or the other for, 40 years from now, they will be talking about this game in a way that, last year's Rose Bowl was cool, but it wasn't, the stakes weren't quite this, and the game wasn't quite this, and, as Ohio State was marching down the field in that last drive, it was like, well, this is either going to be one of the most epic wins in Ohio State history or one of the absolute most crushing losses in Ohio State history.
When we were talking about that, after the game, bowl games, the playoff games, you get to go into the post-game locker room for a little bit. So it was either going to be an amazing locker room or the most dour, depressed locker room ever. And I chose to go to the auxiliary press conference where I got to talk to J.K. Dobbins and Josh Myers. You had some time in the locker room, and I guess it wasn't great there.
Yeah, when you go in, covering the Big Ten championship game, post-game locker room, music playing, everyone's talking loudly, and they're, laughing, and you walked in, and it was like, I have been in funerals that were more lively than that locker room. A whole bunch of guys had already left by the time we got in. They had a 20-minute cooling off period, and a whole bunch of guys left because we had a list of hey, I'd love to talk to some of these guys, and many of them were already kind of on the bus, and I think that's kind of understandable when it's a pro athlete. I think there's one level of expectation. Yeah. I can understand how an 18-year-old might not be ready to rationally discuss a game that ended the way that did. That was the end of a season they've been working on since a year ago. That you may need more than 20 minutes to process that when you're an 18-year-old.
Right. Well,
I get it.
Look, the last play for Ohio State, the interception from Justin Fields, where Chris Olave thought they were going into a scramble drill, so he cut off his route and turned left he completely broke away from his man.
Yeah.
But his man was watching the quarterback and caught a perfect pass from Justin Fields, and then Olave, a sophomore, is just devastated. He's in the locker room. He's got, microphones in his face, and what did you see? What happened there? And basically, he said he cost the team the game because he thought it was a scramble drill and it wasn't. And he's, very upset. And then you go talk to Justin Fields, and it's like he said, no one person loses the game, no one play loses that game. It wasn't Chris Olave's fault. Ryan Day said it was just a miscommunication. This is a very fast game. And it's, we talked before the game, any one mistake, because these two teams are so evenly matched, could cost you. And while that is the last mistake, there are many other mistakes that, we thought it could just be one mistake, but Ohio State kept making mistakes and overcoming them, and almost overcame all of them. But they just couldn't. It was just too much.
It's interesting because I walk away from this game with the idea that Ohio State might be a substantially better team than Clemson. There were a few calls. There were a few, just tiny little, did this catch happen? Did this catch not happen? Just a couple dropped passes and just little tiny stuff that Josh Proctor slips on because the turf is wet. And in indoor stadium, he slips on the wet turf. There's just so many. This was one where Chris Olave thinks it's Chris Olave's fault that they lost this game. It's not Chris Olave's fault. It's everyone's fault, and it's no one's fault all at once. Because it was. I'm writing about this. I started making a list of the what ifs and here's all the mistakes, and it starts with, they just didn't punch it in the red zone. They were 0 for 3 scoring touchdowns in the red zone. When they could have just been shoveling dirt on Clemson's grave in that first half, and they just kept kicking field goals, and it was nah. I tweeted it You can't do this. This is going to catch up with you.
Even if you score 2 touchdowns instead of 2 field goals, it's a completely different game. And those 3 red zone possessions, and you know, J.K. Dobbins goes for 174 yards on 18 carries. Tom, before if you're given those numbers before the game, you're like, Ohio State wins. And the thing is, like, Ohio State beat themselves more than Clemson did. Then you have, Tom, the replay officials, which I believe the first touchdown that was overturned, I believe that was an incomplete pass to J.K. Dobbins.
That was the kind of like wheel route 5-yarder where he seemed diving, like he had it, and he just kind of he had it in one hand and the ball hit the ground.
Right, and he had 1 foot down, but there was no real completion of the catch or whatever. Then you have Sean Wade getting booted for targeting on a play that there is no intent there, but intent doesn't matter. My problem with the whole targeting thing is there is helmet-to-helmet contact from a tackler to a ball carrier 30 to 40 times a game. And to pick and choose when you call it and when to buzz down when nobody on the field has a problem with anything, knowing that that was a 3rd down, that is a starter, that is, you are not deciding the game, but you are going to put your stamp on this game. And that's a lot.
It's a doubly meaningful thing. And this is in the same way that the game, that it was not Chris Olave's fault that Ohio State lost. It was not the officials' fault that Ohio State lost. But the targeting is such a big deal because not only is it, that was a sack. So that would have been 4th and 13. Ohio State was supposed to get the ball back with 4:47 left in the first half and a 16-point lead. At that point, it's like, all right, you get the ball back, you go down and score a touchdown, it's 23-0 at halftime. That's basically it. And instead, Clemson gets a first down. They lose Sean Wade. Matt has a question about who replaced Sean Wade. It was Amir Reep. Amir Reep comes in, second play. Clemson's coaches are very smart. They know where Amir Reep is. They found him. They got him isolated on Justin Ross, and just a little like corner route, and pass interference call on Amir Reep. Now it's down to the 15-yard line, so they've got 30 yards on penalties there as a direct result of that play. And then they punch it in a couple plays later on little like a
8-yard run.
Little run by Travis Etienne where missed tackles. There were a couple. It looked like they had him hemmed in and just couldn't get him into the ground. Very uncharacteristic. That's another thing. Like there was just, you saw big plays they gave up. You saw missed tackles. This was all stuff you hadn't seen all year, and just again, it's like little stuff, but it all added up.
I know you say officials didn't cost Ohio State this game, and Ryan Day is not going to blame it on officials, but overturning the fumble and touchdown return cost Ohio State this game.
It
cost them 7 points.
That was
and Clemson was going to have to do something otherworldly. They were going to have to score onside kick. And then score again.
That was like the targeting call, according to the rule book was targeting. Like there should be a targeting that's less punitive for something that's not intentional, but there's not. That's the fault of the people who write the rules, not the officials tonight. The fumble, the scoop and score that Jordan Fuller had, that is one of the most inexplicable calls. The referee gave a quote after the game and said, the reason they overturned it was because the ball was moving and therefore he never had control. Go watch that replay.
It does not move.
The ball is moving because it is between his two hands and his two hands are moving.
And it doesn't start moving in his hands until the fumble is beginning. And that was almost on the 4th step.
Yeah, it was like 3.5 steps he had the ball.
And that's the replay official looking at it, fast motion, slow motion, regular speed.
And it wasn't just the call stands, it was overturning the call, which requires indisputable video evidence, which was not there because the ball did not move.
And this is a guy in charge of deciding Ohio State's fate tonight. Basically, if he can make that poor of a decision based on video evidence, it's hard to give him the benefit of the doubt on anything else with the targeting. But that, for me, that is the most egregious thing of the night, and yet they still almost did it. But something. There needs to be some punishment there. You mentioned you would expect an apology coming from the SEC or the playoffs at some point. Ryan Day was very upset. I didn't actually see video, but just reading the quotes, he said he's upset and angry, and didn't want to get too far into it, obviously, because no good can come of it. Just know, Buckeye fans, that he's as angry as you are. He's more angry, and as I said to you before we started this, how do you get over that? Because Ohio State was the better team, and they stopped themselves more than Clemson did. The refs stopped Ohio State more than Clemson did. Now, Ohio State played a part in that with, roughing the punter and all that stuff, but
that was really bad. And this is not like it's very easy to say, well, you write for an Ohio State State, so therefore the NFL, NBC official ref expert basically said, like, there is no freaking way you can overturn that call with that video. Like, no way.
And the thing is, those same experts will be 50% correct on targeting. So it tells you that targeting is still a judgment call. But there's no judgment to it because the ball didn't go anywhere, and I don't even know that Clemson fans would think that was an incompletion.
Yeah, that was pretty inexplicable. That is the worst replay overturn I think we've seen this year. That might be the worst call we've seen in an Ohio State game since the Denzel Ward ejection for targeting, where he hit Tavon Jacobs and hit him chest to chest, and it was that's
and
extremely not targeting.
Apologize for that one, but man, that's. We didn't get to talk to Jordan Fuller. I didn't see him.
I talked to Jordan Fuller.
Okay.
Yeah, I talked to Jordan Fuller in the locker room. There were 4 or 5 guys who were really talking in the locker room. He was one of them. I talked to him. I talked to BB Landers. I was in with Chris Olave a little bit, but honestly, Chris Olave was so. I mean, there were so many people around. He's a quiet guy, and I mean, just really had his head down. And before we get into Fuller, he deserves a lot of credit for coming out and being willing to talk about that, because that's one of those things where if he wanted to slide out the side door, that would have been extremely understandable given his age, given how late in the game that happened. There was no time to process. It was just that's it, and it's over. And
he never has to talk to us again.
Yeah, until next year. No. I mean Olave.
Olave.
Yeah. Fuller's one of those guys where, after the Iowa loss in 2017, it was you knew Billy Price was going to be the guy who came out to talk. You knew Jordan Fuller and BB Landers were going to be there to talk, because that's who they are. They're the leaders on this team. That's their role. So Fuller said he didn't have a great view of it. He thought the first time I asked him, he said I didn't really see it, but I just picked it up and ran. Someone else asked him later, and he said, he thought it. He looked at the replay, and it was I think that's a catch.
And, Gene Smith, various people reporting that he was also very upset by that.
And Ryan Day, we have not seen Ryan Day lose his cool once this year. And he was. I think he did a swear on the sideline. I'm pretty sure if I read his lips correctly, he was not real happy. And that's. When Brian Kelly is mad about a call, it's Brian Kelly's mad about everything all the time, and it doesn't matter. When Ryan Day is mad about something, it's that tells you that he really legitimately believes he's got hope.
Because when we're talking about how a third down catch or a drop can change a game, what kind of magnitude does taking a touchdown off the scoreboard have? I mean, that's immense, and now you see the result. You lose by 6 after having 6 points taken off the board, and then you fight back to overcome it, and you get it down to the 23-yard line, and the interception comes, and it's a heartbreaking way to go. Ryan Day said last week he didn't want to be done coaching this team, and we're talking after the game well, now what? What do you do now? Because it was a fun team to cover.
Yeah, it was a great, and I stopped Jerry Emig and Mike Bassford, the SIDs, after on the way out of the locker room, and just said, this was a really fun year. It was just, it's a bunch of good kids, fun coaches to talk to. They played well, they played hard. You didn't have any guys just kind of going out. sometimes you'll have guys that's just like, I don't really enjoy watching you play. And we really didn't have that this year. Like, it was good players who played hard, did stuff the right way. Like, this was a really fun team to cover. And it is kind of a bummer that the season's over from that perspective.
It is, and if this is Sean Wade's last game, terrible way to go out, especially with the impact he had. I didn't think Amiri played all that bad, but you can only see so much from just one viewing.
Yeah, but it was like everyone played okay, like at least okay. No one had like a bad game.
Even Baron Browning had some missed tackles, but he also had a big sack.
He had a big sack. Yeah. And nobody played a bad game, but guys just had just missed opportunities here and there. Just like they're just like the moment. And then go back and listen to our pregame shows. All the stuff last week. It was like these are really evenly matched teams. It's gonna be like one thing, and
it's not like Clemson made all of their plays either.
No,
they left plenty out there as well. And they weren't perfect, and
but you go in and it's like, well, you can change the Olave thing at the end. You can change the call on the Fuller thing. You can change, J.K. Dobbins just getting tripped up by his ankles on the end of a 64-yard run that ended at the 8 instead of getting in
dropping
the end zone.
the screen pass that would have been a touchdown.
Yes, there were a couple that he had. The one that was kind of a tough catch, not a great throw on the wheel route. The swing pass or the screen pass should have caught, had the blockers set up. That's a touchdown. Instead, they set up for a field goal. That's two. That's 3 drives there that are just if he'd gotten 2 hands on it instead of 1, or if he did just, the guy had just not clipped his ankle with his kind of diving stop. That's the margin. That's it. That's 4 points each time. That's the margin. That's the game that we expected. This is not exactly how we probably expected it to play out, but that's what these games are. Like Ryan Day preaches all season, you've got to be perfect. You've got to, when you're playing crap teams like Rutgers, you can get away with this stuff, but you have to focus on fixing the stuff, because even though you can get away with it against Rutgers and Maryland and Indiana, you can't get away with it now. This is when you get to this stage, you can't do it, and they just had just enough, too many of those.
And there were some missed tackles, which they don't normally have. They've been having them later in the season as they've played better competition, which I think the two are related.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So we saw that with Etienne on a pass, and then at the end with the slot receiver, Rogers. Anything from the loyalists, the
all right, so
listeners and watchers?
Matt asked about replacing him with Wade out. Cody says with Wade out, the momentum swung and Ohio State could never get it back. I mean,
Clemson scored 3 straight touchdowns. Not 3 straight touchdowns, but they outscored Ohio State 21-0 before Ohio State finally got in the end zone. So
I mean, they did, and they did get the momentum back because they scored the touchdown, and as soon as this is kind of going to get lost. But if Ohio State wins that game, that 4th and 2 pass to Olave is going to go down in history. It's not quite holy Buckeye, but it's up there.
Yeah,
and it's just and that was Chris Olave, and so Chris Olave at the end of the game is feeling like he's lost the game. He could have been the one. He could have been the one who won the game if the defense gets a stop on that on that last.
Clemson and that play was something I tweeted about where you want an aggressive head coach, and sometimes that aggressive head coach is going to call for a punt block that yields a roughing the punter.
Yeah.
But it also yields a 4th and 2 touchdown pass. But I don't know if you needed a pass there.
Yeah. Well, and it's the pass is brilliant because the pass worked. The punt block is
if that pass doesn't work, how brilliant is it?
Right. Exactly. Then you're being cute.
Yeah.
The Justin Fields in the shotgun, look over and then go under center and snap it real quick while Clemson not looking. That's a brilliant call because it works. 3rd and 1 in the second half, they kind of did the same thing and tried to hand it off to J.K. Dobbins, and then it was being too cute because it didn't work. And the punt block, I have watched that replay 10 times. I don't understand how no one. And that's did that just hit a wormhole going through and just end up on the other side of them? I don't know how. And and that's just if you just get a finger on it. It doesn't even have to be a block that's for a touchdown. You just get a finger on it.
Then you can hit him.
Then you can hit him, and it's not a penalty. And it missed by.
I don't know if it went under the arms.
Yeah, I don't know.
Through them.
Yeah, again, these are the margins, and you're playing with the finest of margins, and they just got caught up on it. Brian says targeting is so subjective. 15-yard penalty is okay, but a player should not be kicked out unless there's clear intent. I would agree with that.
It's all subjective anyway. You may as well add an intent to it anyway.
Right. Yeah, and a 6'5" guy coming at you, and then he lowers his strike zone. What
are you supposed to do?
Yeah, I mean, and according to there's two different rules. It's 913-something and 914-something, and this fell under the first one, which does not require, like, the fact that Lawrence ducked didn't necessarily, the fact that it was head to head didn't necessarily wasn't what triggered it. It was the fact that he hit him with the crown of the helmet. Now, he lowered his head probably because Lawrence was going down lower, and
then he also wrapped up.
Yes.
I guess, complete the tackle. Whereas if this was just a glancing blow, not with a tackle intent, then maybe it's just happenstance. And then, but once you wrap up, you're intending to tackle, and then they take in the helmet-to-helmet contact. That's my only way I can justify the fact that the penalty is because he wrapped up.
Yeah.
If he hadn't wrapped up, there's no penalty, according to
the quote from the official. Yeah. It's a poorly written rule. If it was correctly enforced, it's a poorly written rule.
And it's poorly enforced.
And I think that's been a pretty standard response for quite a while. Brian asks, who do we think leaves? We can probably get into that in...
that might be a better podcast.
That's probably a next week, next Tuesday we can talk about that.
That actually gives us something to talk about.
Yeah, that's
because JK was asked about it today. He's like, that's,
no one wanted to talk about anything.
Yeah, it's you may get somebody to tell you, but other times, like JK the poor guy was devastated today. The players were asked to talk for 5 minutes, and he was asked at about the 4-minute mark about dropping a pass, and he's like, okay, I'll end on that one. I should have caught it or whatever. To think that you're like, JK, you should have caught that, and you came up short in this game. Like, how?
And he played an unbelievable game. He had like 141 yards rushing in the first quarter, and then this is a little like the Jonathan Wells 2001 Michigan game where he just completely blew up in the first half and then turned his ankle and just wasn't the same after that. And he was still. That was like the old cliche about the heart of the champion is like the most tired, nonsensical sports cliche. But like I don't know what else you call it. Like he went out there. He was very clearly very compromised on that ankle. He came out for the first play of the third quarter, and it was just like, nope, that's not working.
Went right back to
and whatever they did, wrap him. He said they just wrapped him more or something. But
he had 6 catches, 47 yards. Like, I'm not going to sit there and ask him, hey, do you think you would have won if you wouldn't have dropped that?
Yeah.
It's like the dude was awesome. He's been awesome all year, and 2,003 yards rushing this season.
Yeah, Jeff says when they had 2nd and 4 late, you needed to put the ball in the air because Clemson couldn't handle the Ohio State receivers. He went conservative when they needed first down. Wasn't gutsy enough to go for the win and control the ball. It was second and 4, and then they ran it and they lost a yard, and then they threw it to Austin Mack for like a yard, and it's like, if you're gonna throw, you gotta throw past the sticks. Yeah. Like you can't throw short of the sticks on 3rd down, and I am as team never punt as there is, but you have basically held them to 1 scoring drive in the second half. You have a chance to pin them deep with it's only a 2-point lead, and he probably should have kicked gone for 2 after that touchdown early in the 4th.
I was okay with it when it looked like Ohio State was going to score a touchdown and make it 9. Then I understood it.
Yeah.
Because if they wouldn't have got it, then you're leading by like 8 or something.
Yeah.
And then you leave Clemson in it. And so if we like it when teams are up by 7 and they go for 2, then I guess if we like teams that want to have that 9-point lead, because that's kind of what I saw that as, I guess, after the fact, after thinking about it. Because we both, at the time, thought they should have gone for 2.
Yeah, I think there were a couple times in the first quarter when you've got Clemson back on their heels, like, you don't have to keep kicking field goals. You can go for it on 4th and 3 in the red zone. Like, shoot your shot, man. Like, you are not going to win this game with field goals.
And they didn't.
That was more of my my quarrel with Day's choices tonight. You know, I don't think he coached a bad game. I mean, I think they're just and you know, like we said, if it works out, it's brilliant, and if it's not, then you did it wrong. Matt says, why does Dobbins run and always look behind him instead of just looking ahead and go? He slows down when he looks for the pursuit.
I think maybe you want to know where the strip is coming from, because they punch the ball out. They try to punch the ball out from him because they know that that's sort of their last resort in getting to him, or if they take a swipe. But I know they probably looked at the board.
They have video boards. I honestly wasn't thinking about to look whether there was a delay or anything on those boards.
Yeah, there is actually.
Emerson says, was there a feel that they got robbed, or did they seem like they felt like they just didn't make the plays needed to win?
They're always going to say we didn't make the plays needed to win, and that's just coach speak.
Yeah.
But they weren't, I mean, JK said that there were plays out there that, didn't go their way. It seemed like nothing went their way. Ryan Day said almost essentially the same thing. Like none of the close calls went their way, and that was, I think, his opening statement or very close to it. But then also said, you can't just blame the officials, and you can't be crying about it. But you say that, but if you have something as egregious as that overturned touchdown return, it should be okay to talk about it, because it is a thing that happened. It is no different than talking about the Justin Fields interception at the end. It is a thing that happened. Yeah. And if it's off limits because of the referees, no, that's stupid.
Yeah.
But anytime you talk about the referees, it sounds like whining.
Right. Well, and it's because you can cherry pick and just say, well, this holding didn't get called or whatever, and that's just kind of like a standard message board Twitter response to everything. So I mean, it does all kind of get lumped in that same kind of bundle. But I mean, Day talked about the fact at the end, like he just said, kind of a lot of tears, a lot of disappointment, and a lot of anger. And I don't think you have to read too far between the lines to figure out who that anger was directed at, because
Dobbins.
Probably not Dobbins.
And that's why it's going to take so long to get over that one.
Yeah. Brian says, how can NFL turf be so bad?
And it was terrible.
It was terrible, and it was something that I noticed pregame, just down on the field pregame. Your feet. Like I don't have like cleats on, but I have sneakers on, and your feet just slide on the.
Yeah, I was taking pictures of the divots out there, and
the issue is that it's an indoor stadium and there's grass. And so there's all sorts of humidity because you have to keep the grass watered. So there's all sorts of water in the thing. You've got the heat from all the bodies in here. That it actually was slicker at the end of the game than it was at the beginning of the game. It's something you've apparently has been a recurring issue here during NFL games as well. People sliding around. It was an issue, and they need to put field turf in here. Like just that you are impacting the results of games because you have a crappy surface.
Yeah, and we want grass because we want grass. That's
right. In a stadium this big and this expensive, if you're going to hold events like this, you have to have a field that isn't a negative impact on the game.
But as Ryan Day would say, both teams had to play on it, and Travis Etienne had some issues on it as well.
Sure, and that's the thing. It's you're playing in. That was one of the things Jordan Fuller said. Like it impacted both teams. And you saw it, and it impacted both defenses, especially where the offense knows where they're going, so the defense is reacting.
Like J.K. Dobbins' long run.
Yeah, that was one of the safeties slipped on that. I mean, it did impact both teams. That was the crappy turf is not why Ohio State lost this game. They did. Jordan Fuller did say this is going to be a great flashback to Buckeye Bowl games past. He said after the first drive, he went and changed his cleats. He needed longer cleats, so. Went into the Tennessee equipment truck to find some longer cleats. But
it's too bad that you couldn't have ideal conditions when we thought there were going to be ideal conditions.
Right. Well, the whole point of playing in an indoor stadium is you want to have perfect conditions that won't impact the game. You don't want it to be snowing or whatever. Like that's the whole point of playing it here. Yeah. So don't have a field that's like an ice rink. Seems kind of simple. John says talk more about Fields maybe. I mean
He threw the ball a lot, but they were when they didn't have J.K., they couldn't really run it because Master Teague, I don't know that this was really for him because he's a straight-ahead guy, and Dobbins' yards were coming from the cutback. And that's not really what Teague does. He's a guy that just keeps going, and then the hole opens up. And I thought for a while there it would have been better with Demario McCall and Marcus Crowley because they could do more of the cutback than Teague. So then they were just forced to throw the ball quite a bit. And, 46 attempts, only sacked 4 times. I mean, he's been sacked 4 times in nearly half of those attempts in other games.
Yeah, I mean, 320 passing yards, only 1 touchdown. But, I mean, again, like we talked, there were a couple throws to Dobbins that easily could have been touchdowns. I mean, then he's 32 for 46 for, probably 340 yards and 3 touchdowns. And, and then that line looks real different. But, for him, he came out on with the big brace on today.
He said he felt fine. It was just wearing the brace kind of affects it.
Well, we had been told during the week that someone had seen him kind of getting in and out of a van and like very clearly this was not like a ruse that he was, he really was 80 to 85%. He said, or he when they got to the stadium, did not come out with the team. When like the whole team comes out, like every single player comes out on the field and they look around the stadium, he didn't come out. It was like, that's kind of weird. And I tweeted about that. And he didn't come out, like they had gone back in, he still hadn't come out. When he finally came out, he was wearing that big brace, like he was getting fitted for that brace or getting some work done. He was clearly compromised tonight, playing against an extremely good defense, still put up a big night. I mean, and had them in a position to win at the end of the game. And you really can't ask for all that much more than that out of him.
That's about 65%, 66% of his pass completion percentage, and he was not a weak link. The interception was the first interception was a bad throw, Isaiah Simmons, and things are spiraling out of control.
Right.
A really underrated portion of this game was how often Ohio State almost lost control and then maybe regained it or just stayed in it to be able to fight at the end.
In the first half, it looked like Clemson was like just spent the whole first half like one play away from just getting blown out of the building.
That 17-point loss we were talking about.
Yeah, and then they kind of hung in there, and then it looked like Clemson had really swung momentum, and it was like, oh, here it comes, and this is you're just kind of waiting for the 16-0 lead to turn into a 38-16 loss, and then Ohio State kind of pulled out of the tailspin and got it together. I mean, there's so much that they did that was admirable. And it was like they really played so well for huge chunks of the game. Mm-hmm. And it was just like, just the little things here and there. And
you think back to, we talked about the 2005 Texas game, how long that game lasted, of all of the what ifs, and if this, if Austin Spittler, if that, if Ryan Hamby, if, Antonio Pittman, or Boom Herron, rather. What?
No, it definitely was not Boom Herron.
No, it wasn't that, but just all of the different what ifs, and this one will be up there for sure.
John says, thoughts on Chase Young tonight? I mean, he just, it seemed like he was just perpetually pressuring, but not actually getting there. And I wasn't like specifically watching him too much on all that many snaps. I mean,
I saw him a couple times chase him into somebody else.
Yeah.
But I thought they did a pretty good job. But he, I don't feel like Trevor Lawrence, like Joe Burrow today, was sitting back and just camping and doing whatever he wanted. That's not how I felt Trevor Lawrence was.
Trevor Lawrence was under assault for a good amount of the game. So, and just since you mentioned Joe Burrow, I think people will look at Justin Fields and compare him to Joe Burrow's numbers and why can't he do what Joe Burrow did? Number one, Clemson is not Oklahoma.
No.
Clemson has a defense.
Yeah.
Clemson has a defense. So that's one thing. Number two, Joe Burrow is a fifth-year senior. Justin Fields is a sophomore, first-year starter who has played just at his school for a first year. Justin Fields has not yet been in Ohio State for 12 months. Justin Fields is going to be pretty good next year. So,
and Joe Burrow wasn't doing this last year as a fourth-year junior.
No, and that was as a fourth-year player, not a second-year player. So, Corey says prediction of LSU Clemson. I mean, based on what we saw tonight, I would say LSU probably, because Clemson did not. I mean, maybe this was not Clemson's best game, but Clemson needed a whole lot of help to not get blown off the field.
Yeah, I feel like LSU will attack downfield more than Ohio State did. Talking to Matt from the state, he was saying all week that he felt LSU would beat either of these two teams by 10 points. And, maybe at this point, I don't know that I would disagree with him on the LSU-Clemson thing.
Yeah, LSU, I would really have loved to see LSU-Ohio State. I think that would have been a pretty good game, especially if there was a healthy Justin Fields, like 100% healthy Justin Fields. Like, I think that could have been really something. But, Eric, not a big fan of the scoop and score overturn. Yeah. Yes. Brian says, were you surprised by Lawrence's speed as I was? No Buckeye could walk him down in that long run.
I was not, Tom. You were not. And if everybody had read what I wrote this week about Trevor Lawrence being a very good runner, you also would not have been surprised.
Well, he has that, like I always think of it as like the Darryl Strawberry stride or the Carlos Beltran stride, where he's just like, it looks like he's not moving that fast, but because his legs are so long, he's chewing up a huge amount of ground every time he strides, and it's like, how can no one catch him? He's not moving that fast.
Because this was my first real-time watching game, not tonight, but like this month, once the game was announced. So then, you seek out a couple of games and you watch him and you're like, holy crap, that dude is faster than you would expect. And that's one of the things I wrote about, and one of the things I talked to Chase Young about, and Greg Madison, and they were all adamant that he's a dual threat guy. Justin Fields said the same thing. He's a dual threat guy. He's not just a guy who stands back there. And they ran him 16 times. 3 of those are sacks. So they called 13 runs, or he kept it 13 with the zone read. And Travis Etienne had 10 carries. So this is like he is a running quarterback who can also throw.
Yeah, if you told me before the game, J.K. Dobbins is going to have 174 yards rushing, Travis Etienne is going to have 36.
Right. That's a ball game Ohio State.
That's a win for Ohio State. Absolutely. Matt wants to know if Olave doesn't cut the root off, is that a touchdown? I don't know. Olave was right in front of me.
It usually is a touchdown.
I would think it probably was. I have not gotten to see like a great replay of that play. So, you may have a better sense for it than I do. But, from what I could tell, and I'm looking through a camera viewfinder at that point, but from what I could tell, if Fields had thrown it the direction that Olave was cutting and Olave had not slipped on the crappy wet turf, that's probably a touchdown. If Olave goes the same way Fields is throwing, he's matched up against a safety. I like Chris Olave's chances to get that ball against a safety.
Even if it's not a touchdown, it's not going to be an interception.
Right. Yeah. That was an interception because it got thrown right to him. John says that stadium is a disaster for Ohio State. Like, yeah, I mean,
it's time to turn down the invite next time.
Yeah, I mean, things could have gone better here. Maybe stop inviting Urban Meyer. Just thinking out loud here. Brian says, thought the offensive line played an excellent game dealing with exactly the kind of exotic D held up for the most part.
I do wonder what would have happened if J.K. didn't leave due to injury.
Right, yeah. If J.K. Dobbins is healthy the whole game, do they win? Probably.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, again, the margin is so small, it's like you change any one little thing and the butterfly effect probably ends with them winning.
And they could have won just kicking field goals, I think, with the way he was running.
Brian says he felt like he was at church postgame with Dabo and Lawrence quoting Bible verses every minute during postgame interviews.
That's Dabo.
Dabo Swinney. What can Dabo Swinney do to get you in this used car today?
Exactly.
That's. Brian says that's all I have. Thanks, guys, for the great coverage all year. Yeah, this has been a fun year. Like, this has been like we said, it's been a fun team to cover. They're easy kids to talk to they're likable, good kids. Like it has been an entertaining team.
It seems like not so long ago we were repeatedly talking about the linebackers should be good, the secondary should be good, but we don't know because we haven't seen any of it. And you finally get to see it, and then spring ends, and then all of a sudden 5 games have passed before you even blink, and then we're here.
Yeah, Ronald says field goals don't get it done. Yep. Matt wants to know what's wrong with Dobbins. Yes, it was an ankle. It was
left ankle.
Yeah, And someone said that they saw Clemson like trying to twist his ankle in the pile. I don't know if I didn't see that on TV. Someone just mentioned that. So, it was just like so close, but yet so far. Which this is one that's going to sting for a while, because this is, they have had, you go back through the losses they've had in this game. Just in this stadium, the Florida game, they just got absolutely blown off the field, and it was, that was a soul-searching kind of loss. The national championship game the year after that in the Sugar Bowl against LSU, that was a little bit of a what if, where they're up 7-0, we're driving again, you have that like one penalty that kind of kills momentum, and then LSU comes back. The loss here to Texas, the why boom no take knee game, which that was one that I think stung a little bit, but the stakes were so much lower.
It would have been nice to get the monkey off the back at that point. Yeah,
the Orange Bowl against Clemson. I mean, that was one that.
Right, Tom. We've got to.
Well, I'm just kind of like working through, like, in terms of like just at real stomach punch kind of year-end losses. Like this is right up there with like a baseball team giving up a walk-off homer in a deciding playoff game or something like that.
Well, I'll say this: games like this, the way Ohio State, those seasons you're mentioning, that's like the only source of joy for Michigan fans. Mm-hmm. Because they can't get it like in their own lives. So they have to, enjoy the misery of others, and so at least you're not that. Mm-hmm. At least Buckeye fans aren't living like that. And I guess if you have to lose in the Final Four or lose anywhere, I guess it's better to lose in the Final Four than your regular season finale.
Well, and now they've got something to, they have.
Boy, howdy, do they got something?
They have gotten here now. You have the opportunity to take this and learn from it, and I'm sure they have not worked their way all the way through Kubler-Ross stages of grief yet, but when they do, you have an opportunity to take this and learn from it. And you're going to have a new defensive backs coach, you may have a new quarterback coach, you may have you're going to have a whole bunch of new players, and The cycle starts anew in just a few weeks with winter workouts, and
spring camp opens probably around like March 7th. So like it's not that far away. Pro Day will be around then.
Got signing day, National Signing Day. We have another guy or two to add to the roster. I mean, it's
12 months a year, even though this season is now over.
Mm-hmm. Yes, the season is dead. Long live the season.
Perfectly said. Anything else?
That's it. I think we're done.
All right. We'll talk to you guys later. Thanks again for watching all season long, for listening, and we'll see you when we next do this.
It's probably soon. We never spend too much time.
That's true. All right. See ya.